Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. Welcome back. As I said to you, Lara, in times of strife, I turn into the David Brent. Go and get Lara. And I don't. Look, obviously, I don't purposefully do that. But how are you doing?
Oh, just there. Back where I was 2 years ago. It's dire at the moment. It's just dire. Don't know where to start really. I feel like everything we sort of talked about, to this time kind of 2 years ago when we were in the depths of Conte despair. It's all kind of back again. It's just a different face in front of the press conference, isn't it? Yeah, I mean,
you were there yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Let's start there. Like, what was? I mean, we've all seen sort of the videos and everything, but how did you feel that the atmosphere was there? Because, like you say, you've been a season ticket holder most of your life.
Yeah.
You've gone through the various different waves of Levy out or manager out sentiment. A few of the journos said that's the loudest they've ever heard anti-Levy sentiment yesterday. Really?
I would agree with him on that, yeah. I mean, I was late getting into the ground because I'm on a one person protest at the moment, which is I refuse to spend any money in the ground. They're not having anything out of me. I've paid for my season ticket. I'm not paying for anything else. Unless we get to a cup final, I will buy a ticket for that because, not being funny, I deserve it. But yeah, they're not having anything else out of me. So I went and bought a drink in the pub beforehand, got a burger from the van, and basically waited till the last possible minute to get into the ground. So I got in kind of just as the teams were coming out. Obviously saw like the big banner that they had out, because I think they only had it out kind of before the game, half time, and then at the end, because there people literally stood there like holding it. But it was just, there was a bit of sort of early on, a few sort of muted Levy out chants starting. I'm going to sound like a proper QAnon conspiracist here, but I'm a little bit convinced that Levy's got people in the crowd. Well, there is something in it. Like, we've heard stuff, about him trying to actively shut down the protests. We know how Levy operates. I don't think it's too far a stretch to know that he listens. He's got an ear out for this stuff and he tries to shut it down. I know, like, my husband had a thing recently where he was in one of the hospitality bits with a mate who happened to have tickets. It was for the Man U game, actually. And when the kind of I don't care about Levy, he don't care about me chant started, he started joining in. One of the stewards came over and put his hand on him and was like, I was like, oh, piss off with that. Like, yeah, I don't like that. So I know there's...
It's not an abusive chant, is it? It's not abusive, no, it's not offensive.
Exactly, but clearly staff at the club have been told, try and keep a lid on this. So, we're not quite in North Korea yet, but clearly, there's something there where they want to try and shut it down. They don't want people really vocalising this stuff. So I've noticed every time a Levy out chant starts up, within about 5 seconds, there's a "Come on, you Spurs" starts up sort of from slightly. And again, maybe I'm just being paranoid, and there probably are some people who don't like the Levy stuff during the game. But I wouldn't put it past him. So that I noticed that at the beginning there'd be the odd start of a Levy chant, and then "Come on, you Spurs" would start up, and it would kind of drown it out. And then obviously we scored, and that kind of mainly I would say it was just dead. Like, the game itself was quite wasn't. It was boring. I remember I turned to the guy next to me about 20 minutes in, and I was like, how are we only 20 minutes in? I thought I'd been watching this for about 2 hours. So it was very flat. At one point you could hear the players shouting at each other on the pitch, like it was just dead atmosphere. And then obviously after half time, when they came out, scored their 2, it really started ramping up. And then by the end, the chants were loud. Like, that is definitely, that's the loudest I've ever heard it in the stadium. And it really yesterday did feel like a bit of a watershed moment where something's changed there, and people are starting to feel more comfortable, I think, with and more passionate about getting involved in that and actually, making their voice heard on that. Because I've heard the odd one or two before, maybe at like one game or whatever.
Yeah.
Never heard it like that. The tide is definitely turning on him now, big time.
I think I remember like around the time of Olympic Stadium and StubHub as well. Those were two sort of big issues where I remember there being quite a bit of anti-Levy noise and stuff, I would say. But yeah, the past few years, I mean, I think that we've had every reason to kind of be annoyed, but he's managed to kind of like gloss over that with the stadium, like really the build of the stadium and the positive press around that. But I mean, we'll talk more about Levy and the sort of the running of the club a bit later on. I sort of want to stay with the match day thing. You mentioned the kind of banner and the people holding it during the game. Do you have any idea? Because I've been sort of trying to poke about on Twitter and everything. Do you have any idea how they managed to even get that in? Because I know in the past it's really really hard to get anything into that ground, flag wise, banner wise, and stuff like that. So I mean, a sterling effort from those involved, I would say. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But can you imagine we're going to start seeing more and more of this type of thing, this type of direct action, if you like?
I hope so. Honestly, I do. I think it's needed. I know it was the Spurs for Change group that were behind the banner yesterday, and I've sort of been dipping in and out, keeping an eye. I'm not personally involved in any way, but I've been interested in obviously keeping an eye on their feed and seeing what they're doing, because I'm very much on the bandwagon with them now. And I know again from seeing their replies to the tweets and stuff, the fact that they know the club are watching what they're doing. So it's this madness. It's like, because it's like, it's crazy. It's a football club. Do you know what I mean? It's not political activism. But they're having to be quite cagey about what they're doing, because the club are actively monitoring. If it's tricky, because obviously it's hard to get big action going if you can't publicise it and tell people what you're doing. But if they tell people what they're doing, the club are keeping an eye on it and then taking steps to stop it happening. So I can see the dilemma they're in there, and I think from what it sounds like, a lot of planning went into getting that banner into the stadium, and I think they put quite a bit of work into talking to the media and letting people know that was going to be happening. And fair play to them, it's worked, because that's the first time I've really seen the media start to pick up and go in on Levy a little bit as well. So well done them.
I see Nizar Kinsella picked up on it for BBC Sport. He said a banner in the South Stand reading 24 years, 60 managers, 1 trophy. Time for change was displayed in the South Stand ahead of kickoff. However, that hasn't affected the atmosphere inside the ground, as fans get behind their team as Archie Gray wins an attacking free kick in a good area. It's kind of like that was part of his match day commentary. And I guess on that note, because he's actually segued it in quite nicely, you were sort of talking there about, your more your theory that Levy might be kind of getting stooges and stuff into the ground and everything. But I think outside of that thing, I know just like anecdotally from conversations that you have and just being in the ground at these various different times when you do voice any sort of dissatisfaction, there will be a lot of people who have the opinion that whatever's going on with the board, whatever's going on off the pitch and everything, when you're in the ground, when you're in the stadium and there's a match on, you shouldn't be bringing that negativity to it. You should be supporting the players, should be supporting the club, and all of that noise just brings the players down. It's not supporting them, it's not helping them out. I'm not putting that forward as my opinion on this. I'm not having a dig at anybody that is chanting anti-Levy stuff or anything like that. But do you think there's anything in that in times like when it is like it is right now? Do you think there is that kind of that worrying conflict between supporting the team and also letting that dissatisfaction be known? Should we, and I'm sure people like Change for Tottenham will come up with an idea of how we can have, say, targeted points within a game or whatever that are for making that displeasure unknown, or do you think it's quite simple, like Flav was saying on Fighting Cock the other day, really what needs to happen if people want to make a change is the match day atmosphere, the environment needs to be uncomfortable for somebody like Daniel Levy. It needs to be, therefore we talk about tourists and everything coming into the ground, they need to be in the ground being like, what the hell is going on here? Why is everyone so angry? Why is this atmosphere so terrible? I don't know. There's not really a direct question in there for you, but if you can make sense of anything that I'm sort of whittering on about there, that would be
totally. Because I've always kind of been of the, and I think I've even said it on this pod before. I've genuinely been of the mind that, you know, during the game, support the team, you know, because the negativity doesn't really help. I think my mindset has shifted on that a little bit lately, because it's just got to a point where it's like, what else can we do? But I'm torn myself a little bit on it, because as I say, I've been up to now, I've been very clear on, all up for making noise before the game, half time, full time, during the game, get behind the team. But at this point, in some ways, I feel like by vocalising the issue with Levy, in some ways it is a kind of backhanded support of the team, because it's almost like saying to them, look, we know it's not you, it's him. I mean, some of it is them sometimes, but I mean, yesterday, for example, despite, you know, the fact that obviously I thoroughly joined in with the Levy chants, and was really pleased to hear how loud they were, I still stayed at the end to clap the team off, because I felt like, you know, there was a lot of kids out on that pitch yesterday, and actually they weren't awful. Yeah, like they made mistakes, but it's a team full of teenagers by the end. If it's not their fault, you know, some of them have been our best players in the last few games. You know, they don't deserve I don't feel like they deserve to go off to a chorus of boos, when, you know, the boos are for Levy and for the, you know, general management around the football side. I know there are some frustrations with some of the more senior players, but, you know, the majority of those were not on the pitch yesterday, and I don't feel like I felt it was important to stay and make sure that they felt a bit of love at the end, and I think they were still getting applauded off by a lot of people at the end. So I think you kind of hope that they can understand that that's not directed at them. But I do think there is something in the fact that you probably can't do it for the whole game. I think it's, you know, having, again, sort of set points where, and, you know, it'd be nice to be able to do it just at half time or at full time, but that's when they crank up the music so they can't hear you.
Yeah, Munich
so
by the
it's
editors,
all a game. It's all you know, it's all a mental game, isn't it? Of, you know, this is the mad world we live in now. It's like going into some sort of psychological war with the powers that be at Tottenham. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's the fact that they don't really give any other option to have your voice heard. And there is a piece for me that does think, you know, so many people online have just been saying, well, Levy's never going to go. There's nothing we can do. What can we do about it? Let's just get the manager out. And okay, maybe Ange isn't the right person. You know, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know anymore. But there's a bit of me that feels like we haven't even really tried. Like, it's like everybody's just thrown their hands up and gone, well, we can't do anything. Levy owns the club. He's not going to go anywhere. And it's like, yeah, but have we tried? Like, have we? Yeah. I know ultimately, you know, yes, he owns the club. It's going to be up to him if and when he goes, and, you know, billionaires will billionaire. But you can't not try. If you haven't tried, you don't know, do you? And the least you can do is make, you know, it a little bit uncomfortable for him. So he can't just sit in his heated seat with his prawn sandwich and have a lovely time and go away safe in his little bubble that he's doing a brilliant job.
Because I think the main thing is really, because, look, from my perspective, you know, I was floating the question out there quite ambiguously. I think people can do whatever they want, and if people want to make noise in the ground, I personally don't buy the idea that that's going to somehow affect the players on the pitch. I mean, it may do. Maybe I do buy that, but right now, I kind of feel like the Tottenham fan base have been very tolerant. The Tottenham fan base have been very patient, and what I don't like is you'll often see these kind of interviews that will get, you know, a Simon Jordan or somebody like that, basically a business-minded guy. Claude Littner is an example of that now at this point in time. Yeah, exactly. What are these ungrateful fans on about? What are they doing? Not ungrateful fans, mate. We pay the most amount of money to go and watch this team play football. Like, but as I'm always going on about, like, the financial kind of obligation that is expected of the fans is never reciprocated by the club. We've just seen the 100%. Deloitte figures, like, this month come out, that we have, proportionately speaking, the lowest wage spend in the Premier League, which is like it's disgraceful. It's just we've got even on a base level. If we cut it like this on a base level, whatever you think about him, I'm not entering into a conversation at the moment about whether I think he's of value or not. The bare facts are we've gone from paying even Antonio Conte £15 million a year to now paying Ange Postecoglou £5 million a year. The way those kind of wages cut, we've gone from paying Harry Kane £200,000+ a week to Dominic Solanke on reportedly between £80,000 to £120,000 a week. I've seen various different amount of figures floating. I don't really. People will say, "Oh, I got the figures from this website." I don't really ever think anybody really knows how much the players are on. No. Yeah, there's always a general kind of idea from whatever. But look, if fans basically paying the most money in the country are unhappy with the direction of travel from the club's sat 15th in the table. We're actually having legitimate conversations about the club getting relegated. Yep. I think they have every right to boo and voice that displeasure because, what is it? I mean, we can say, people will always say, Donna Cullen listens to all of the podcasts. So when you're slugging off Levy and stuff, it gets you blacklisted, and that means you don't get invited to the fan forum and all this and all that. And I'm not trying to do you're hard, but it's I don't care. I don't care about that type of thing. I'm not doing I do this because it's a hobby and it's fun. I'm not doing this to get a new shirt before it comes and have to do an Instagram post about it or something. I'm not, do you know what I mean? So they can do that, but there's all these different little avenues to try and quiet kind of dissenting voices and stuff, right? And totally. I think for the most part, and this is why I've never really entered into that, because I know it's been. People have kind of enjoyed for the past few years, mainly because I think they don't like the way in which a lot of the purple and gold movement perhaps has voiced its frustration in the past. When and I'm not saying this is true of every single person that would say they associate themselves with the purple and gold, but I think it's undeniable that there are many big voices within that group, for example, who are quite abusive, who are very aggressive online, on Twitter and everything like that. And it's not even towards Levy and the board, it's more towards other fans. If you're not a part of this, you are X, Y, and Z. And I think that's kind of put people off. And in a way, it's been quite counterproductive because, as we've discussed in the past, I think a lot of people have often thought, well, I'm not really happy with Levy, I'm not really happy with the way the club's going, but I also don't really want to be associated with that. So that's been one thing that's quite difficult. But I would say, to sort of try and wind my point up that I'm making, Spurs fans have been very patient. I think they've understood that we were building a stadium. And before that point, anyway, that we were going through these kind of processes. We were going through the Martin Jol era. We went to, managers like Andre Villas-Boas, through to Harry Redknapp, through to, Juan de Ramos, whoever. But there's always been seen to be a sort of direction of travel. And that direction of travel has supposedly led us to where we were 5 years ago, which ultimately was a team that was finishing within touching distance of winning the Premier League, being up in that mix, was regularly in the Champions League, actually making a Champions League final, and sitting in a brand new, game-changing, brand spanking new stadium. And I think everybody was like, yes, I can moan a bit more about this, but I can tangibly see the trajectory that this club is on. I can see that we're heading in a certain direction. And yes, I'm really frustrated that we haven't bought any players in this Pochettino era to try and have a fist of winning the Premier League. But we do have this stadium on the horizon. This is all part of a plan. But now, and yes, COVID came along and whatever, and perhaps took things off rails a little bit. But I think we can quite comfortably say now, we've been sat in this stadium for 2-3 solid years, earning reportedly £5 to £6 million a match day, as well as all the kind of non-match day events that take place, the widely publicised non-match day events that take place at the stadium. And yet we're still sat here being told the same thing. Oh, well, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for us to compete in the Premier League. It's very difficult for us to buy players in January. It's very difficult for us to buy players in summer even now. It's very difficult. It's all very difficult. But also, you have to swallow these ticket price increases because, that's also one of the realities of it. And I do kind of feel like now a lot of people really are suddenly like, what's going on here? Actually, what is actually, what's going on? Like,
100%.
Yeah. And if people want to make a bit of noise about that, I think they are well within their rights to do that.
So do I. Like, the thing about patience, honestly, when people say, oh, Spurs fans have got to be patient, it's been 24 years. Like, if I live to 100, which I'm not going to, being a bloody Tottenham fan, that's a quarter of my life. How freaking patient have you got to be?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't, you know, I think where people have landed with Levy now, this is not based on, a knee-jerk on the last year. It's 24 years of watching this bloke do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I feel like he's still trying to operate. It's like he's still trying to implement his strategy from 2001. And it's 2025. It's a different, like, again, you did never, in any other organisation on the planet, I don't know, outside of maybe, you know, a royal family or, you know, massive empires like maybe Microsoft or someone like that, you would never have the same board in charge for 24 years. Like, times move on. And I feel like, you know, you can't sort of wipe away everything that he's done for the club. I mean, now I very much think it was all for the bloody wrong reasons. You can't deny the fact that, okay, you know, he's put the club in a position now where we've got the finances now to compete, but he's not interested in using them, and he hasn't got a clue what he's doing now. He hasn't got a clue what he's doing now. The right time, honestly, I think the best thing Daniel Levy could have done is, after opening that stadium, leave.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know what to do now. He's got no idea how to run a successful football club. I mean, I think, obviously, not trying to plug other podcasts, but I listened to the Last Word on Spurs podcast last night. I think it was crackers on there. Absolutely sensational takedown of Levy. He absolutely nailed it. Just basically saying, this guy has not got the bollocks to run a serious football club. He hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He's a businessman. He hasn't got what it takes, and he's way too risk averse. He's not got the risk mentality required to go out and take the risks needed to push us on to the next level. I think that's where I've landed with Levy now. It's like, it's a horrible limbo to be in, because, well, until this point I was saying, you know, well, we're never probably going to get relegated. Maybe we will now, I don't know. But you kind of know it's never really going any further than nearly. Like, the one thing, like I always said, you've got with football is hope. Like, you know, there's 92 or however many clubs in the league. Majority of them are not going to win a big trophy, probably ever. But the one thing you've always got is like the hope that maybe you might do a Leicester, or maybe, you know, you might do a Luton and come all the way up from, you know, non-league into the Premier League. You know, that's the kind of the hope that you have. And we're in a position where we've sort of been mid-table for a very long time. You know, we've sort of moved up into like those European spots and started to kind of knock on the door. But it's just become blatantly obvious that if we get there, we'll never push on, because to them, the target is the Europe money. It's the Europe money. When they talk about wanting to compete among Europe's, you know, greatest and things like that, they're not talking about trophies. They're talking about the money you get from being in that competition. Nothing matters other than being in it. So as soon as you get to fourth, job done. Don't need to worry about going any further. Why would we go out and, you know, spend another 150 million on players? This squad's good enough to get us in the Champions League for the next 2-3 seasons, and we can, you know, cream off the profits from that. Why would we want to, you know, chuck some of that back into a depreciating asset that would be, you know, a ready-made player that will probably be worth less when we sell him, because we will have played him through his best years instead of selling him at his best years, to actually get over the line and become, you know, have a little spell of dominance like a Liverpool did a few seasons ago. Or I don't really like using City really as a comparison, because they are so, you know, they operate on a different planet, and they've cheated, which they're obviously never getting done for, but whatever, you know, they are where they are now because of what they've done in the past. They you can't really compare them to anyone else. But yeah, I feel like he's just shown us they're never going to do it. So what are we hoping for? Just to qualify for Europe? No.
I mean, the thing is, don't you? I think the thing I find quite sort of concerning, or at least strange this time, is that even within the sort of the landscape of Levy, if you like, the past couple of years has felt particularly negligent, right? Do you think he almost just doesn't really care anymore? I think it's when I look at the precarious, and we will talk about this. We'll talk about Tottenham and the threat of relegation and everything like that. But I think this conversation is quite naturally developed to this point. I did want to save the Levy stuff to the end, but here we are.
Can't avoid him, can you?
Well, that's it. And it just feels as though if you were in charge of this club, you built this asset, and you had the power to make a change quite directly to the fortunes of this football club up front, wouldn't you do it? Like I don't. In the past, to be fair to him, he has. Like when we've hit these sort of pinch points, he has sort of, you know, for want of a better expression, lost his arse a bit, and usually dropped a bit of money in these positions. Think, right, we better, you know, if we imagine probably going back to someone like Redknapp, when he was like, right, go on, here's the money, get Defoe back, bring in a Cranshaw, bring in Crouch. We need some help here. We need 2 points to make games and all that. Here's some money, get those players in. Whatever you need to do, Harry. Probably under Conte, we had Kulusevski and Bentancur in that window before. Yeah. But it almost feels like this time around now, he's almost like, well, no. I mean, we've just got injuries. We're not going to spend money to solve a short-term problem. And it's almost like the fact we're having these injuries is masking the fact that the squad wasn't, I think we can honestly say, the squad wasn't really fit for purpose in the first place. I think most of us, and I understand some people wanted to be hopeful, some people didn't want to be seen to be negative or feel negatively going into a season. But I think a lot of us, a large percentage of people, after that summer window, were saying, this squad will not last us the season. It won't last us the season. And I'm not trying to do like this told you so thing, but what I'll say is, it was the sort of stuff I was saying on here, and I was getting pelters from it from certain people saying, you're being negative, way to go into a season. It's like, I'm not trying to be. I want to enjoy this, but at the same time, for all these sort of players like Oliver Skipp that you want to write off and say he's crap, and Højbjerg, who I hope, you know, hold my hands up and said we were crap. We never replaced them though. We let them go and we never replaced them. Some will say we brought in bill. Yeah, some will say we brought
games to play.
Yeah, but also that we brought in Graham Bergvall. But Graham Bergvall, that sort of bracket of player, should always be built on top of buying those kind of players for here and now. We're going to run these two, like Archie Gray yesterday against Leicester. He's an impeccably brilliant player. In my opinion, he had a bit of a stinker yesterday, but that's because he's knackered. He's a kid, like he's a boy,
and he's 18. He's been played in about every other position other than the one he's meant to play in.
We're running these lads into the ground, and this is what I was saying. Games like yesterday are supposed to be the games where we're getting to the 75th minute, we're 2-3-0 up against this, you know, awful apparently Leicester side, 2-3-0 up, and then 75 minutes, the thing comes, Basuma runs off, clapping the crowd, he's had a good game, and you see the exciting 18-year-old Archie Gray or Lucas Bergvall come on to get some minutes in their legs and experience what it's like. We've had to chuck these lads in, and they've done a great job, but it's not right. Like, it isn't right the way we're treating them.
And they're going to make mistakes because they're 18 and playing
they
out
haven't
position.
Really, to be fair to them, like, which is the mad thing, which is testament to them. But, like, I worry about their longevity as a result of this. And it's just, it's mad to me. It's mad to me that we are still, we've known for months leading up to this January, at least 2 months, that we desperately need players. We need bodies in January. We're sitting here on the 27th of January. What's the betting that in the next few days, all right, we'll sign some rando from the Eredivisie that we've seen,
Probably.
you know, Brian Brobby or whatever, you know, the Brian Badonde, Brian Brobby.
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. We'll sign some rando like that in, and that'll be that. And the reason why we've done that on the 30th of January is because Daniel Levy has been doing his usual brinkmanship bullshit with somebody else.
And that's all we're left with.
Yeah, has been proven to actively harm our seasons year after year after year.
Yep.
But still we are doing the same thing.
Yep.
But even by his standards, this feels like another level right now.
It is.
I can't quite wrap my head around it.
No, it's like all the noises coming out of the class. Oh, they're going to back Ange. Well, then back him.
Back him or sack him, as
or
people
sack
say.
him. And it's like, surely you can see what's happening here. And the one thing that always has driven Levy is the money. Well, if you get relegated, good luck financing those loans and all the stuff that you keep telling us you have to keep putting our season ticket prices up for. You know, it's a little bit, I don't know, if something's going on, or it's a little bit like that episode of Peep Show with Johnson. Has Daddy's hat fallen off? You know what I mean? It's like trying to print from the wireless printer that isn't wireless. I don't know. It's just a bit. Yeah. What you it just either smacks of that there's something going on behind the scenes, of which I've got no idea what that might be, or he's just genuinely almost like paralysed with inaction because he ain't got a clue what to do. And it could very well be either of those things. But whatever it is, it's not. It won't. Whatever it is, it won't be good for the football side of the club, will it? It'll be some other bollocks driving it.
Are you, Lara, actually starting to get worried about relegation now? Like, is it at least something that's not just looking over your shoulder? It's maybe tapping you on the shoulder now.
I don't know. I think I might be a little bit in denial still, because you still look at the table and you think 7-point buffer. Our goal, is the goal difference is basically an extra point, because if you look at the teams below us, they're all minus 20 something and we are plus 9. I mean, obviously that can be wiped out. I think at the moment it still feels like an outside possibility, but it's becoming more realistic by the day. But I think there's a bit of me in the back. I think there's something in the back of my head that's going, well, Levy won't let us go down because of the money. Surely he's not going to allow that to happen, because the only thing he cares about is money, and that would be financially devastating to get relegated. That I think there's a, but I should really learn that Levy can never fail to disappoint you. So I don't know. It's I don't know. It sort of feels a bit not real. It's like I'm talking about it, but it still doesn't quite feel real. But I am fully aware that it's not an impossibility. I don't want to sit here and go, oh, there's no way we're going down, because let's be honest, Tottenham can overturn any kind of outside odds if it means everyone else can laugh at us. So
I think my main concern here is that, you know, I think is it a 7 or is it an 8 point? It might be an 8 point buffer. Hang on.
I think it's 7. Well, I think it was 7 yesterday when I looked, but I don't know how up to date it was.
Quick maths. Wolves are on 16. We're on 24.
Aren't Leicester in between that though? I thought they were on 17.
Well, Leicester are 17th. They've climbed out of the relegation zone.
Oh, there we go. See, I don't. My maths. Stunning maths yet again. I've made the relegation zone an extra place apparently. So there we go. So 8 points. Thank you. So it's better than I thought actually.
Yeah, but that can evaporate. That's my sort of fear on this. That 8 points can evaporate, and I am looking at our kind of fixtures, and the way we're playing right now. I just don't see where the points are coming from, which is quite wild. It's quite a wild place to find ourselves in. you know, when you consider we've got United, well, we've got Brentford away. Apparently, we've never won there in the Premier League.
Have we not?
Apparently not.
That's not good.
Got Ipswich away.
We've still got City at home.
Yeah, we still got City to play. We still got Stamford Bridge to go to, Anfield to go to. We've got to go to the Molineux. We've got to go to West Ham.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I'm getting a lot more worried about this, and I feel like, do you know what? In some now I've gone full conspiracist now, but you remember what happened in the Leicester season when everyone didn't want Tottenham to win the league, and they all played out of their skins against us.
Yep.
And rolled over against Leicester. Can you just imagine the same thing? Can you imagine West Ham turning up for a game with the knowing that they could,
knowing they could push
us
us further
the
to relegation
zone.
Chelsea as well.
Even yesterday, it was really fun walking out of the ground yesterday because I was going the same direction as the Leicester fans, who definitely have manufactured some sort of weird imagined rivalry with us.
It's
very
bizarre.
weird. Like,
it's bizarre.
all
You
they
beat
were
us to the
singing about
title.
was, I was like, I can honestly tell you that outside of the 180 minutes plus time wasting that we play Leicester every season, they occupy precisely zero of my brain space.
No.
But yeah, honestly, that whole thing was all, Tottenham are shit, LA, who came third in a 2-horse race and all of that. I was like, okay, this clearly means more to you than it does to, in terms of like that. Obviously it means more to them than it does to us because they're catching us up in the league and down we go further into relegation battle. But in terms of an actual derby, I don't really care. Sorry, Leicester. But yeah, you look at those teams we've got to play, Chelsea, West Ham, they'll be so up for this. And all our players are knackered, all their kids. I mean, we've obviously got players to come back, but it just feels like at the moment it's like, yeah, we've got the players to come back, but it's like as soon as one comes back, another will go down. Like, how long is it until Kulusevski gets a hamstring, or Pedro Porro, who I know hasn't been the best lately anyway, but I don't know, it just feels like I've definitely got some sort of PTSD from these injury crises, to the point now where I'm thinking, when these players come back, it's almost like, yeah, but how long until they go down again? It's something's very wrong there, whether it's just the investment in the squad, or they're recruiting for a whole new medical team at the moment, aren't they? So maybe there's something in the fact that something hasn't been great there, because it's not just under Ange actually that we've had injury problems. It isn't just under him. It's worse this time, but this has been a running theme for a good few years now, getting to sort of November, Christmas time, and suddenly there's a mass influx of injuries. It can't all be Ange. I think his way of playing means that it's probably more likely to happen. But I don't trust anything about the club. I don't trust that they know what they're doing in terms of managing these players' injuries. I don't trust that they know what they're doing in terms of looking for transfer targets. I don't trust that they know what they're doing in terms of who to play in what game. I don't trust that if they get rid of Ange that they're going to go and get the right man next. I've got zero trust in any of them. I've got no trust that they know what any of them really know what they're doing at all. It's a shit place to be in, really, because it's like it's hard to find something, a quick change that you could make that would make you feel, I feel like good about this now. There's still too many things broken, and for all the the whole thing about bringing in Scott Munn, who I still have got absolutely no idea what he does. It doesn't really seem to have changed much. It's just new faces on the same approach. I'm just Levy out basically. I just think it's just time for a change. This the whole thing has got stale, and it just smacks of scrabbling around, not knowing what the hell we're doing to try and cling on to something that. And I don't know what it is he wants out of it. Is it, I don't know, is it legacy? Is it glory? Is it just money? I honestly, I can't work out what his end game is here. It's just, but yeah, we're all just stuck in his little theme park at the moment. Bizarre. It feels like, yeah,
it's bizarre. Let's. There was one bit of non-Levy booing yesterday, which was directed towards, I'm assuming, Ange Postecoglou's decision to take Richarlison off. I mean, I think, to be fair to Ange, Richarlison is not fit, and he's very, very important. So we have to manage his minutes accordingly. And also, I would assume, to be fair to a lot of the crowd, they're not exactly booing Ange Postecoglou. Maybe this is trying to apply a bit too much to it, but you wouldn't also be surprised if people are just booing the idea that we just have to take somebody like Richarlison off because we've literally got nobody else to be able to bring on. But you've sort of touched on a bit of it there, about how much Ange is culpable for the situation that we find ourselves in. And I've avoided going into the kind of, it's his fault that there's injuries, or it's not his fault that there's injuries, don't be so stupid. Because, quite frankly, I don't know, and I don't think we're in possession of enough of the facts to know that. But my sort of gut tells me, I'm sure it's kind of partly his fault, really. Like, we've heard about
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's
exactly.
a little bit like
we've heard about his methods.
Yeah.
The same sort of thing happened last season as well. You know, a lot of our squad broke down in winter, and I don't think, like, it's one of those things that's held up as a bit of a gotcha for a lot of people who are very, very, very pro Ange Postecoglou. Well, you know, that's just the way it is. That's what his standards are like. You should know that. That's what this manager demands of his players. And to me, it's like, okay, cool. Well, I do know that, but that can't really fly, can it? Can we just have this managed decline every single season and just shrug our shoulders and say, well, it's winter time now, so we'll no longer be participating in football because everyone's tired and injured, and that's kind of that. And I don't think you can say 2 seasons on the bounce. It's just bad luck that we've had wholesale injuries. And yes, had we more kind of first team players, undoubtedly we'd be able to rotate more, and there would be less strain placed upon those players. So like you say, it's like you can't lay it squarely at his feet. But at the same time, I can't just sit here and say, nah, none of it's his fault. But look, I'll say to you, like as I said in the post match yesterday, I just kind of feel just momentum and just the way things are right now, I sort of feel like it's probably time for him to go. And I won't be delighted about that. I think, as I've said before on here, I think it'll be a shame. Yeah. I'm sort of nicking your point, but you said it to me before we started recording it, that it would feel almost like he never really got properly started. Because it's like we sort of seen glimpses of what can be done here, but it all seems to sort of break down too quickly, too easily. And when it breaks down, it's terrible. I think a lot of people forget quite how bad we ended the season last year as well. Like, we were atrocious towards the end of last year. And we've sort of had a bit of a hangover of that into this season. That even when we were all right at the start of the season, we weren't ever really great. So I think he probably does need to go. And I know people will say, well, you want Ryan Mason to be in charge till the end of the year. Well, not really, but to give him his dues, he did steady the ship after Conte and Stellini. And maybe that's just what we need. Like, maybe we just need the ship steadying a bit. But the point I sort of want to say to you is that I follow this, and I try and think about this as logically as I can, and I take all of these steps. But where I always ultimately end up is that, like, well, we bring in Iraola in summer. and we're going to end up in the same place again. So in some ways, like whether we keep Ange or don't keep him right now, at least, weirdly enough, it kind of feels irrelevant because it feels like the culture around the whole club, at least the culture around the club as an actual football playing entity, just feels completely rotten. It feels completely broken. And it feels like the people in charge of the club actually... We always hear that Daniel Levy isn't a football man, that he doesn't really understand football. But it actually feels like, oh, mate, you really didn't like get actually quite how good Son and Kane were. And actually quite how much they were papering over the cracks of this. Because you just kind of thought you could sell them and continue to operate as you have been.
Yeah.
And now I think we really are starting to see, actually, no, we had the greatest strike partnership the Premier League has ever seen, statistically speaking, and let's be real. At least in the modern era, the greatest player we've ever had came for our academy. One of the greatest strikers of all time, England's greatest ever striker, at least again statistically. Like, and now we've sort of gutted that out of our team, and now we're struggling. And you still thought you could get through this without addressing that. So. Like, if you're Ange in or Ange out, I don't really know 100%, Lara. But also the question is sort of a moot point, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was very strongly Ange in for a very long time. I don't think I'm not violently Ange out now. I'm sort of just on a...
You're not in the stands, like... No.
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of said it on... I think the point I reached was at the half-time in the Everton game the other week. I just sort of looked at me on the sidelines and it just, I don't know, I got flashbacks of Martin Yole at the, I can't remember who it was we were playing. Was it Getafe? I can't remember who we were playing.
Getafe,
and just sort of, I got the same feeling. We were just, I kind of wanted to cry a little bit. I was like, this is done, isn't it? Like, I think I tweeted it, I was just like, it's over, isn't it? Like, it's, I can't sort of blindly stay on a bandwagon but I think there's a bit of me that feels like it's over, but it's not. But it's over for so many reasons, and so many of those reasons are still going to be here after he's gone. So that's where I'm kind of at with you. Of like, yeah, he probably needs to go, but is it really going to make that much of a difference? Like, we're really at the point now where it's like, he's got to go so we don't get relegated. And I'm paying £1,500 for my season ticket. And it'll be Ryan Mason or whoever is Matt something or other in it. Can't remember his surname.
Matty Wells.
That's the one, Matty Wells. Till the end of the season. And then we go again. Another summer of going through managers and being turned down by managers and getting an underwhelming manager. We came in a bit too late for the transfer window, so we couldn't get anyone in this time. And then in January, it's really hard to do business in January. And then, just... But my season ticket is still going up next year.
I'll be interested to know how... If we do go down, which I'm still got my fingers crossed now, but I kind of like... I still don't think we will, but I'm actually starting to get a bit like... he is starting to get a bit worried, but I do wonder how they'll address that. I mean, the season ticket prices, the ticket prices, they're not going to go down if we go down, are they?
No.
They'll just say, we'll freeze them. And then you'll be like, well...
I wouldn't, honestly, genuinely wouldn't be surprised if they put them up. Because he'd frame it in the whole... Because that's why they're getting rid of the senior concessions, isn't it? And the junior ones. The justification of that is all to do with our loans being secured against guaranteed revenue from the stadium, and that's why they have to. It's not sustainable over time to keep having more seniors, because we've got to hit those targets of the guaranteed revenue from the stadium income. So I could honestly see him going, well, we've got to do 8 more games. We're in the Championship. That's 8 more league games. So. You want those 8 extra games? You'll have to upgrade to Championship Plus membership or some nonsense. I genuinely wouldn't put it past him. Either that, or he'd just have to massively ramp up the other events in the stadium. But this is why I'm so confused. I can't understand why he's walking this tightrope. Because surely the one thing he does understand is business. And if that stuff that he's been telling us is true about having to get rid of these, the concessions because of the loan repayments and that sort of thing, well, surely you are massively in the shit if we go down. Surely, that's the one thing that's going to speak to him. So unless there's something else going on there, maybe might just have to delay the hotel plans for a bit.
I mean, I don't know. It's just
maybe sell the naming rights finally. That would have been worth how many millions a year? I don't know.
Should we do your thread? Yeah,
why not? The history of Enoch.
So, if you've not seen Lara's thread, follow Lara on Twitter. So it's so as in LAA Lazzarini number 7, right?
Yeah, so Lazzarini 7.
LAAZARINI 7, the number 7 that is. All right. So
that's the one.
So you can look at this as we talk about it, but essentially Lara's basically told the story of Enoch through the prism of all of the managers that we've had in charge under them, starting with Glenn Hoddle. So what did Glenn Hoddle have to say about his time working with Daniel Levy and Enoch?
So Glenn Hoddle's one was largely around shock transfers. Talking about his growing frustration, I kept running down dead ends when it came to signings. It often seemed I wasn't on the same page as the board. Shock. I found it strange that I never had a single conversation with the owner, Joe Lewis, and I wasn't the last Tottenham manager to discover that transfer talks tended to drag on when the chairman, Daniel Levy, was involved. Interestingly, a lot of them say they got on with Daniel, but it's the same story coming out from everybody. And it sounds like he also had a bit of an issue with David Pleat. But yeah, long story short, it said ultimately everything felt too political. Wasn't that I had unwanted signings foisted on me from above. The problem was more that we dithered when we needed to be decisive, which stopped us progressing. We had some promising young defenders, but other parts of the squad looked tired and frayed. We needed more energy in midfield, given that Darren Anderton and Jim Sherwood were getting on. But the lack of funds forced me into compromises like signing Jamie Redknapp on a free transfer from Liverpool. It wasn't the behaviour of a club looking to challenge the elite. Most of our best players were approaching retirement. I loved Jamie. Just overlook that. But his contract had to be incentivised because of his knee problems. And I also knew that we couldn't expect our main strikers, Teddy and Les, to last forever. That was in 2001, 2002. That you changed the names, and that could apply to any of the managers, really, couldn't it? Over the last 24 years.
And then we've had old Jack Santini, who basically, I mean, long story short on Jack Santini, he basically just said that the football club was all over the place. Because it was always a funny thing that I remember when we signed him. It was the French national team manager. Wow, this is a coup. This is huge. This is going to be decent. He's supposedly a top draw manager. I think ridiculous as it seems, there's probably a part of us as well that was thinking Arsene Wenger's French. This guy's French. That was probably quite good. It worked out for Arsenal. He was always kind of pitched in the same way as Arsene Wenger. That kind of quiet, professorly type manager. And he literally left after a couple of weeks, really, didn't he?
It wasn't very long at all. I think it might have been a couple of months, actually. It felt like a couple of weeks, but he was, And he couldn't speak English either, I don't think, could he? Which I think obviously didn't help in terms of being able to... You didn't hear much from him at the time, really. And
it's basically his reflection on the club is that it was a mess, that they didn't have a clear structure, they didn't have a clear idea of how football operations worked or anything like that, and it was just an untenable...
And he had no say on transfers, again, was the other one.
An untenable situation that he found himself in, which is funny because sort of into this point, because Well, I mean, it just feels relevant now, not just because I'm not saying because another French bloke said it, but just listening to Hugo Lloris's autobiography that he's came out, and all the stories about the Watchers and stuff came out. He was saying that before Pochettino came in, he wanted to leave Spurs because he just said, even compared to a club like Lyon, he was like, I went to Tottenham thinking, wow, this big London club, famous old club. And I come from Lyon, which was big team in France and everything, but not quite the same profile, at least. And then he was like, I went to Tottenham and I was like, this place is a mess. Like, this place is a mess. At least at like Lyon, it operates like a proper sporting club. It was like it was a proper sports club, football club. Everybody had clearly defined roles. Everybody was playing their part into achieving success. And he said he came to Tottenham and it was just chaos. It was all over the place. And he had no idea what was going on there, and it felt like nobody else had any idea what was going on. But this is worrying. This is years into like Enoch being in charge still. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Martin Jol has said that. Martin Jol, a similar sort of story, isn't it? He said that he had to speak with Frank Arneson and asked for the type of players that he'd like, but never really got to have a say on the sort of players he wanted to buy, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounded like actually he had an okay relationship with Arneson, because actually Arneson wanted Jol in the first place, and Levy said no. He didn't think Jol was a big enough name, and that's how we got Santini, and that lasted about 5 minutes, and then we got Jol by default because Levy agreed to let him be the assistant but not the main manager, and then obviously he became the main man, and then because he did well, he kind of had no choice but to keep him. But then Arneson obviously went, Comolli came along. I don't think there was any love lost between Jol and Comolli. But again, it comes down to, he was being given certain types of players, and he's going and saying to them, I think the squad's going to be unbalanced with these. I don't think these are the sort of players we need. This is what I need, and they were giving him something completely different. So obviously it didn't work out, and he left. And then one day Ramos.
Who, I mean, this is a story I'm sure we can relate to, in that they pulled the rug out from underneath him with the sales of Dimitar Berbatov and Robbie Keane. He said we need to replace them with players of a similar quality, and Samuel Eto'o, who was an aging Samuel Eto'o at that point, and David Villa, both at Valencia. He noticed that these were players of two profiles that he wanted to work with. We just didn't do it. We went and got Roman Pavlyuchenko, who I know a lot of people have a lot of affection for, but I think we can say is nowhere near the quality of the two that were mentioned there. And Darren Bent, who less said about him, the better. I mean, the problem with this stuff is, right, like, you can look at this and you can say, well, this is a manager having a bit of a tantrum. If you've got a manager saying that he didn't buy me the players that I wanted, and the players that I wanted were Samuel Eto'o from Barcelona and all this type of thing. But when you hear this from basically every single manager down these periods, like...
Yeah,
I mean,
basically the club didn't have the patience to continue the project. They gambled on selling players. The project we had initiated was broken. I was good. I was happy. The problem was that we didn't work together. And if you don't work together, at least there not being an understanding. That poor understanding meant I was dismissed.
Harry Redknapp,
the working together comes out every time. So Redknapp is Redknapp. So he's always been fairly amiable, I think, with Levy. But the key with him is he basically came out and said, like, I thought the club could have pushed on when that season where we were suddenly found ourselves in a league run, a title race out of nowhere, much like Leicester did in their season. And he felt we could push on. I think the two big ones always come up with Redknapp is Luis Suarez and Eden Hazard. And he wanted to sign Suarez. We wouldn't put up the money for it. He wanted to sign Hazard, who, to all intents and purposes, sounded like he was basically ready to sign for us. And this is while we were still in the title race. I know at the end, the end game was he ended up going to Chelsea because they won the Champions League and stole our spot and there. But it sounds like he should have been allowed to get to that point. He was ready to sign while we were in that title race. Again, capitalise while you're on the up. Like, we're in a title race at this point. We're the ones that look like we're going to finish in the Champions League spot. No one thought at that point that Chelsea were going to win the bloody Champions League. They were like 12th or something. Like, that's the point at which to get him to... And he's literally sitting there ready to sign. Levy didn't want to do it. And then, obviously, come the end of the season, he's got the choice between us and Chelsea. Chelsea are in the Champions League, we're not. I'll go to Chelsea, thank you. And they'll pay me more. So it's that again, and that January transfer window when he wanted to get in, I think it was Gary Cahill and who was the other one? I've already forgotten. And ended up with Nelson and Saha. And well, again, rest is history. If a few more points and Chelsea wouldn't have been able to take that Champions League spot off us, we put ourselves in the position where that it was possible for that to happen. And again, sliding doors moment, Hazard goes to them instead, and who knows what could have been if we had pushed on in that window instead of sitting on it again and just hoping everything would be okay and we would scrape through. And we didn't scrape through that time. So then he was gone, and it's AVB. Mr. PowerPoint.
I mean, that's got to be like João Moutinho, right? If he's not mentioning João Moutinho, I'm
oh,
writing.
yeah, Moutinho's in there. Moutinho, Willian, Oscar, and obviously the cult figure, the man who never was, Leandro Damião.
Oh, God. Did he actually mention him?
Yeah. I still don't even know what he looks like, but I feel like he played for us. Oh dear. Feel like I know him.
The chairman proposed a challenge to increase Tottenham's competitive level, but immediately Luka Modric left, and we didn't get any of the targets I identified, such as João Moutinho, Willian Oscar or Leandro Damião, he told Portuguese TV. These were promises that were not kept. I had a group of players I had not chosen. In 2 years, I lost Van der Vaart, Modric, Bale, and all promises made were unfulfilled. I mean, it's fucking infuriating, man. Because again, that was one of those periods. And we saw Moutinho come back to the Premier League when he was about 52 years old and still looked unreal. And I remember at the time, because it was when I was much more kind of, I guess, sneaky for want of a better word, and I was more kind of watching players abroad and all this type of stuff. And I remember it was just like Moutinho is the perfect. We're going to lose Modric. Modric is a world star. Like he's surpassed us now, and we're selling him to Real Madrid, not to Chelsea. We're selling him to Real Madrid, and I can understand. It's frustrating and it's annoying, but that happens to teams. That happens to teams bigger than us. Still, when Real Madrid want your player, they go. All we can ask for is, though, you bring in somebody like Moutinho that we clearly identified early doors and was such an obvious replacement for Luka Modric in that team, in that system, working with that manager who wanted him. I think they had a previous relationship.
They did,
I know it sounds trite, but both Portuguese. It makes sense. And we just didn't. And do you remember like getting to that transfer dedeadline day?
Wasn't
and it was
that
still
the
like
fax machine one?
Yeah, we've got the paperwork in for Moutinho. We do, we don't. And it never happened. And then we were just sat there with like, well, we've sold Luka Modric and just not replaced him. Like, how is this not important? I'm sorry, I'm starting. It's making me it's
triggering, isn't it?
Honestly, that period, because like I know AVB was annoying, and I know his football. I would say the thing I would say is right, and this is why I kind of have a lot of sympathy, I would say, and a lot of at least a lot of empathy with people who are very, very Ange, because at that time I was very Andre Villas-Boas in.
Me too.
And I knew, and I knew that objectively the football was not good, and it was not great. He wasn't playing his hand that he'd been dealt very well, and I could see that objectively. But I also held firm to the belief that we would have been doing so much better had he actually been supported.
Given I think isn't it? Yeah.
AVB's tenure and Ange Postecoglou's tenure can be so. I think they are so twinned. Yeah. I think there's so many similarities between what's playing out with them.
Right. You're right. I feel very similar to I think how I felt with Ange the other day when we were 3-0 down against Everton. I was like, oh, shit, it's over. Very similar to, I can't remember which game it was because we got whopped a lot of times, wasn't it, at the end of
But I think
AVB.
Liverpool was the one where you're like,
yeah,
this is
there was
done,
Liverpool and City very close together, wasn't there? I can't remember which, but same thing. I sort of went, I'm going to have, I can't see how he goes on from this now. It's that same realisation. But like you say, feeling all along, it was never really given a chance. I was saying to my dad in the car yesterday. So I feel like with Tottenham, we ask every manager comes in and we ask them to complete a jigsaw puzzle, but we give them all the bits from someone else's box. Yeah. And then we're surprised when they can't put the picture together. Yeah. Like, same thing over and over again. Very frustrating. Very frustrating.
I mean, Tim Sherwood's one is. I mean, it's peak Tim Sherwood in so much
it's
as
tactics, Tim. So you always have to take him with a bit of a pinch of salt.
by the way, everybody, I discovered Harry Kane. By the way, just so you all know that. But still, the story is quite wild. And the funny thing is, this is one of those stories I remember doing the rounds on Twitter when ITK types were saying this is what's going on with Harry Kane and Soldado. Yeah. And hearing Tim Sherwood a few years later, obviously now actually confirm that is quite funny if you want to take people through what it is, Lara.
Yeah, well, it's essentially like you say, Tim in classic Tim style. I'm sure he's as always probably elaborating slightly, but basically telling the story of how he was going to put Harry Kane in for a game, and Levy essentially came to him and said, "Why are you not playing Roberto Soldado? You know, we've paid 29 million pound for this guy and you're devaluing him." And he was like, "Well, I hadn't thought about that." Basically, he was like, "Oh, I want to win the game. Do you want to win the game?" Not thinking about the value, I'm thinking about the quality. And then was essentially questioned by Levy saying, "Well, we're not sure he's Premier League quality," which, to be fair, I can't really coat Levy off too much for, because I also said once on Twitter I didn't think Harry Kane was Premier League quality, which is probably one of my most embarrassing moments.
That's a bit different though, isn't it, as a fan? Like when
I'm not the highest paid football chairman.
Right?
And I was very wrong, and I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. Certain people are not willing to admit when they're wrong. But yeah, so essentially he kind of said, "Well, we don't think he's good enough." And long story short, that he was suggesting, "We've got offers in for this lad. We think we should let him go." And Tim kind of asked, "Well, how much is the offer?" And he said 600 grand. And that's what we could have let Kane go for 600 grand.
I mean, it's wild, isn't it? When you think about, there's almost like there's just like this awful feeling of like, imagine had we done that? It's disgusting.
Well, he would have been the one yesterday pointing to his sleeve, showing us how many more Premier League trophies he's won. Instead of Jamie Vardy, maybe. Don't know. But yeah. Moving on from tactics, Tim, to...
I mean, Mauricio Pochettino, we know a lot about his metaphors about furniture and in the house and the painful rebuilds and everything, right? But...
Yeah.
If ever there was a guy that you thought was going to actually have earned the backing of this fucking chairman, it would have been him. And I think we all saw how broken Poch was by the end of his tenure. And realistically, still, I mean, I'm sure he's having fun managing the USA, and good luck to him in the World Cup and all that type of thing. But he's never been the same bloke since, has he? He's never had that energy, that drive. And some people will say that's partly his own fault. That's his own issues that he needs to sort out. And I think fair enough. But I think that also undermines quite how emotional a journey that whole Pochettino tenure was for us as fans. And I'm sure for him.
Yeah. Well, he was still clearly very hurt that Levy didn't pick the phone up to him last year, which is why he went to Chelsea to try and prove a point.
He's good as he
went out.
He went on national television and as good as said, "I want to go back to Tottenham." Like, he all but said that. He said, "I've got unfinished business with the club. I love the club."
Yeah. Do you remember, was it Jesus Perez on Instagram with that sort of strategically placed laptop where you could see the transfer market website and they were looking at the Tottenham stats or something? When everyone had gone like full forensic and was like zooming in and going, "Look, they're looking."
He said something like doing our homework, didn't he? I think he said it as the tweet.
They've gone like full, almost like Da Vinci Code, like Levy, come and get us.
Yeah.
But regardless, no, they didn't get the backing. And And that's what, that clearly comes out in Poch's quotes. I think, they're so recent, most people will remember them. Everybody kind of knows the furniture quote about there's no point in building a, lovely house if you're not going to put the furniture in it. But I'd forgotten, actually. Somebody else reminded me of this after the when they replied to the thread saying about find the quotes from him about being how his title should be changed from manager to coach. And I'd forgotten about that. I saw that little outburst that he had where someone was questioning him and he said, I don't think I should be called Tottenham's coach, not the manager, because I'm not in charge of transfers. Was it sell, buy players, sign contract, not sign contract? I think it is not in my hands. It's in the club's hand and Daniel Levy's. The club need to change my title and description. Of course, I am the boss deciding the strategic play, but in another area, I don't know. Today, I feel like I am the coach. Asked about the future of Danny Rose, he said, I am not in charge of transfers and I know nothing about the situation of my players. I'm only coaching them and trying to get the best from them.
On to Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, Jose actually hasn't really said too much.
I had to stop myself there, Lara, because I can't reminisce over Pochettino. I spend basically every single podcast reminiscing over Maurizio Pochettino, and I'm just, makes me sad.
I'm still a little bit burnt from the Chelsea move, but I'm re-warming to him a little bit now. I'm starting to be able to I might be able to unmute him on Twitter maybe at some point. I think I muted the word Pochettino because I was like, I just can't deal with this. Mourinho is just Mourinho doing Mourinho things. I think during his tenure he whinged plenty anyway. Obviously his big beef is about the fact he was never allowed to play his final. And his statement about basically how he feels affection for every club that he's been with. We will be collected forever, like I am with all my previous clubs, apart from Mr. Levy's club. Which tells you everything.
That's quite
again.
pointed,
He didn't call
it?
it Tottenham, did he? He's actually in some ways, got many views about Jose or whatever, but the wording of that shows he's clearly not trying to. And he even said, I hope the Tottenham fans don't get me wrong here, but the only club in my career I don't have a deep feeling for is Tottenham, probably because the stadium was empty COVID time, probably because Mr. Levy didn't let me win a final and win a trophy. I saw a video the other day as well where he says he always says that he'd won something like 25 and a half trophies because he counts he said I was never allowed to go for that one, so I say I won half a trophy. I mean, that's just ego, isn't it, really? But also, that's the defining thing of that entire era is you basically ripped the heart out of the club, took Poch away, didn't back him, got seduced by Mourinho, who apparently Levy had always been a bit infatuated with, hadn't he? So as soon as there was a sign of Mourinho, he obviously had to drop everything and run. But then after all that, sack him the week before a cup final and give it to Ryan Mason, who, with all due respect to Ryan Mason, I've got a lot of respect for him. I think he's actually a very intelligent guy. But, baptism of fire. And also, a League Cup final against Man City, no offence, I'm sure Ryan Mason would say it himself. Who's more likely to know how to manage that game? Yeah. Mourinho, who's done this a million times over, or Ryan Mason, who's never done it? And obviously everybody has to have a first time, but again, we're not in that position. We're so desperate for a trophy. It's been years and years and years. Finally, here's an opportunity to have one. Yes, it's Man City. Yes, you're up against it. But that's the one thing Mourinho knew how to do. And no, we'll get rid of him. Fine, whatever. Next, Daniel.
Well, the interesting thing for me now is that I know we've spoken at length kind of about the issues of Daniel Levy and Enoch and all this type of stuff, and that there have been many issues down the years. But in terms of the real messiness, the actual kind of abhorrent situation we find ourselves in today, I think it's after this point. I think it's after Levy, 2021, the scramble for a manager, getting to Nuno Espirito Santo, going for Antonio Conte, and then ending up here again.
Yeah,
it's here. This is where the real rot that we find ourselves in now really begun after this. After we biffed off Mourinho, and then you can tell. I think it's as soon as we biffed off Mourinho, that's when Kane's head was gone. Kane was then like, we're not fucking
This ain't
serious.
happening.
Like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
isn't serious. I've wasted my career at this club now. And I think I know we get angry. I know people get very angry at Kane and all this type of stuff.
I don't.
I feel for the fella, man. Like, I feel for him. I do. Like, you know, I really think he tried his hardest. He gave us his best years.
Give us a
tried
lot
to make
longer
a success of this
than
club.
most would.
Yeah, and look what it now. He's going to limp to a Bundesliga title, which is, I'm sure he'll be happy to at least get something. But I mean, you know, this is a fella this summer who, I think they probably could have been. I think City offered us something about 70 million for Kane at this point, who was easily worth over 100 million pounds. Yeah. But they probably could have come to a compromise with Manchester City at some point along here if they really wanted to, but didn't. And this for me really is where the rot set in, because Nuno, I think, is a decent guy, and I think he's obviously showing that given the right circumstances, he can do. He did a good job at Wolves before, and he's doing a fucking blinding job at Nottingham Forest now. But he was just not the right man for Tottenham in any way, shape, or form.
No,
was he the right man for Tottenham? Right? No,
I think most people felt a bit sorry for him. I think we could all see, like, we all felt a little bit like, oh, you've been
other than when we had.
mate.
Other than when it was the Emirates away, then I was like, get this fella out of the club. Get him gone. I don't care if it's been a couple of weeks. Get rid of him.
That whole thing just felt wrong from day one, from all ends. It was just completely the wrong fit. And it's not, it's not anything against Nuno. He's clearly a very capable manager. But there's definitely a thing in football where some managers fit with certain clubs. And, sometimes it's as much about the culture and the style of the club as, a manager that's great in one club won't succeed with every club. I mean, none of them succeed with us, but let's be honest. But I think that was just one of those where he just was not the right. The fit just wasn't right between the two. We weren't the right club for him, and he wasn't the right manager for us. It was the best thing for both parties, and clearly best thing for him, seeing where he is now. To part ways, really. But he's never really spoken about his time with Spurs, I think, because again, so short-lived, and also, why would you really want to when you're still kind of in the game? I'm sure he'd like to forget the whole thing happened now, really.
Dan Kilpatrick was on the Lab the other day, Flav's other pod, and he was saying of Nuno that he was always a nice man, but he had this almost strange sort of demeanour about him where he actually... Like, he didn't get why he had to do press conferences and speak to the media. He was just like, he actually didn't really see it as part of his job. Why he's there to manage the football team, not to sit and talk to the media.
Like Ange.
Yeah, I know. Why should he have to do that? And it's kind of...
Yeah.
It was quite
part of the job now, mate. Like...
Yeah, it was quite funny, quite interesting. So again, but I mean, I raised this point because, again, it kind of shows you that, again, this is a guy who sort of, he's coming to manage whatever any Arsenal fans or whatever want to say about us. One of the biggest teams in the country, especially at that point as well, where there is a lot of media attention on you. The fact we haven't even vetted a guy that is sort of savvy enough to realise he's going to have to talk to the media, be quite amiable with them, is quite damning. And then obviously,
well, he was
I think
basically the only one that said yes after 7 other people had turned us down or something, wasn't it? Yeah. So,
and then Antonio Conte, we know, that's all fresh in the memory, and we've landed on Ange Postecoglou now, who I think, like I was saying earlier, despite everything that we can say about Ange and if he should be playing his hand better, I still kind of think he maybe should be somewhat, perhaps not play as quite as aggressively as you are when half the team is on its arse. I still think we can probably say the guy is still, barring the odd little emotional flare up here and there, I think he's handling this whole thing with quite good grace. Like I think it's only after the Leicester game. After the Leicester game is the first actual hint, I would say, the first hint of dissent from him towards the board. When the questions were put to him about the fans, making their voices be heard in the stadium, and I think I'm not going to say it verbatim, but I think he said something to the effect of, they've got every right to voice their complaints or something, or he could
I can't remember
understand where we were
exactly
coming
what he
from
said.
or something.
It was something like that, along the lines of wanting to unite. My goal was to try and unite everybody, basically. So this didn't happen, but it's happened. I think I don't know. Ange is a funny one. He sort of flip flops, doesn't he? Between the fans can say what they want, but then also arguing with fans sometimes in the stadium. So I don't know. I think he's just a bit grumpy sometimes, isn't he? But wouldn't you be? Probably. Like, he's under a hell of a lot of stress now. Let's be honest, he hasn't reached Conte levels. I know a lot of people are kind of calling him out at the moment, saying he's rude and things like that, but I don't know, there's a bit of it. Some of it is just that slightly Australian blunt thing of don't ask me stupid questions. And sometimes they do ask stupid questions. I think he has been a little bit overly shitty with people recently. But you can see it weighing on him now. You can see he's a man under stress, and it's like, oh God, this is what they all end up looking like this. We've reached that point now, the sort of looking like you haven't slept in about 2 weeks stage, while you hope somebody will come in before the end of the transfer window who absolutely definitely won't.
Well, I mean, there's still continued talk today that we're after that Dibbling lad from Southampton who I'm sure is fantastic.
Good. Yeah,
he's supposed to be amazing stuff, but again,
he's
injured. He's injured and he's 18. He's a kid. It's another kind of promising signing, which, great, bring him in, but bring someone in for now. Yeah. Bring someone in for now, if that's what we're going to do. And
we've got the money to do it. So I'm just not having any of this shit about, we haven't got the money to do it. We've got more leeway than any other club in the Premier League in terms of money to make signings without falling foul of PSR or whatever. I can't remember what the acronym is. I think it's PSR. It's crazy. We've got. I'm just so done with the excuses of we can't. It's really hard to do business in January. Yeah, I know it's hard. So use a bit of the extra financial clout you've given yourself. Go the extra mile. Put a bit more money on the table. Money talks.
Yeah.
How do you think Man City have managed to get 3 players across the line? And again, I know people say don't compare us to Man City. It's different. I know, but again, levels. Yeah.
And we still make money. Like, it's just, I get it. Don't compare us to Manchester City, but also we do still make like loads of money. So
yeah. We make more money than 99.9% of league clubs. We're making more commercial revenue than Chelsea and Arsenal. They managed to sign players. We're not asking for the world. It's just we make the most basic signings look like running a blimmin' marathon.
I think the fact is, the thing that's quite interesting is that Arsenal have leapfrogged us in overall revenue, but we're basically neck and neck with them without Champions League football.
Yes.
And they have Champions League football.
Exactly.
It's monumental. It's massive. That is massive.
Yeah. That was unthinkable years ago, wasn't it? Absolutely unthinkable.
But here we are, still kind of pleading poverty, putting season ticket prices up, and seemingly, at the moment, there seems to be no end to this current strife because from everything we hear today, Alistair Gold has said that the club will be backing Ange Postecoglou. They do still stand by him. They know it's injuries. They're not going to sack him. They're not going to get rid of him. And we can speculate. We can sort of chatter amongst ourselves if that's because there's no viable candidates out there or whatever. But it does just feel like we're not in a good spot. I can't really see the end of this right now. I see that Tottenham are kind of that bad that I'm not even confident that Romero and Van der Ven coming back sorts all of this out.
Yeah.
It probably will be a big help. Let's be real, but
yeah,
I'm not overly convinced it helps it all entirely. We just have to hope that we don't get anyone like Kulusevski breakdown. We do get those two back. We get Solanke back soon enough. We get Basuma fighting fit ASAP, and we can end this season well, because at the moment it's disgusting. In a club of our size, on our statue. It's not entitlement. It's just we shouldn't be in this position. Like, we shouldn't be in this position.
No.
Like, Arsenal wouldn't find themselves here. Chelsea wouldn't find themselves here.
No.
You know, and if we aspire to be a club on that level, we shouldn't be there. But look, I don't know.
Totally
any
agree.
closing thoughts from you, Lara? Because I appreciate I've taken loads of your time today. So
That's all right.
yeah,
As
If
always,
you want-
I think it's good sometimes. You just need to get it out, don't you?
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where to. I honestly, I don't know where we go next. I think my closing thought is we can change the manager, but unless something fundamental changes at the top, nothing really changes here. And after 24 years, are we really going to see change from Daniel Levy? I don't know. But I do think, personally, I think the time has come where the attention needs to turn to Levy. And, 24 years, that's the one consistent thing that has run throughout the whole thing. I mean, you just go back and look at those quotes. It's been the same issue over and over and over, and nothing is changing. And he's charging us more and more money. He's pricing our fans out of the stadium, basically taking away something that to a lot of people is something they've loved their whole life. He's taking it away from us. He's making us feel that we've got no control. He's bred an atmosphere where you've got fans basically going, what can we do about it? Nothing. We can't do anything about it. I think for me, the time has come for us to, at least try and make our voices heard on this, because he needs to remember that he bought a football club and he didn't buy a property company. If you wanted to just make money out of property, go and buy property that doesn't come with annoying football fans that are going to give you shit when you don't put the right furniture in. So I think, from my view, I would just say anybody who's feeling like I do, go and check out Change for Spurs on Twitter, online. That they're the ones that are kind of driving this at the moment and trying to put together some kind of action to move this forward. Like I say, they're having to work around the North Korean approach of the club. So it's tricky, but if you are looking to be part of something to help make a difference and actually try and do something and feel, just feel like we've done something, at least we've tried to make him feel a little bit of what we're feeling, go and do that. That would be my takeaway. Until then, let's just back to the madness. We'll see what happens.
Oh, mate. Thank you very much for today, Lara. Not much more to say as other than Coys, I guess.
Coys, Daniel.
Yeah, Coys, Daniel.